So now we are moving on to the hiragana ka through ko. We are starting off with hiragana ka. Hiragana ka has 3 strokes. First stroke. Alright, so we have a line going to the right, slightly inclined, a line going down with a little bit of a curve, not exactly straight down, and it must have a hook in the bottom. The hook isn't too intense, but it still needs to be there. Okay, so for the second stroke, you notice that it's not touching the bottom of the line, the bottom of your paper. If you were to write it on your paper, there's a little bit of space here. And finally, the third stroke is up here in the corner. It is a stroke that goes down to the right, and it kind of hovers over this corner here. Next, we'll be going over the incorrect ways of writing hiragana ka. First example. For this first example, you see that the second stroke here is longer than the first stroke, so it should not exceed the first stroke. It should be hovering a little bit higher than where the first stroke ends. Second example. So for this example, it's just showing the little dash here where it doesn't belong. So it should be up here in the corner, in the right hand corner, but you see it down here. So this would be considered incorrect. Third example is written where it doesn't have the hook here. So this would be considered incorrect. Okay, and that's it for hiragana ka. Next we have hiragana ki. For hiragana ki, there are 2 ways to write this character, and I'll explain why there are 2 ways to write the character. First stroke, second stroke. These 2 lines are almost the same length, and they are slightly inclining. Third stroke. Line goes down and hooks up. And the last, fourth stroke. Okay, so this is kind of curved a bit, and the reason why is because this part here and this part here, originally when written with a calligraphy brush, way back in the day, it was connected. But as time went on, the line kind of got thinner, and so for the handwritten form, this is acceptable. The little bit here just kind of disappeared. For a printed form, which means when you're on a website and you look up this character, or when you're typing out this character on your keyboard, it would look something like this. So it's just a 3-stroke instead of a 4-stroke character. Essentially, it's the exact same thing, except for this part here, which is actually connected, and in a handwritten form, it is not connected. I've seen this form being handwritten as well, and really I accept either one, whichever one is easier for you to write in your assignments. But just know that they are both pronounced ki. So in your worksheets, you may see this character here where it's connected, but just know that it's the same thing as this one where the bottom is not connected. Alright, next I'm going to show you the incorrect ways of writing hiragana ki. First example. For the first example, everything is too straight and too angular. So you have the 2 straight lines here, which is like an equal sign. You have a line going straight down here with the hook instead of normally where it would incline. Then this would be at an angle with the hook. Then you have the bottom portion here, which is slightly curved. And this one is straight here. Another example. For this example, you see that the 2 lines are going down to the right when they should be slightly inclining up to the right. So it's kind of going in a different direction. So this would be considered incorrect. For the printed form, if you write it and the equal sign is straight and the line in the center is going straight down, this would be incorrect because for the printed form, it should be the the lines are still going up an incline. And this line here in the center should be at an angle going down. And then you have this belly sticking out here. Next we have Hiragana ku. This character is pretty simple to write. It only has one stroke. And there you go, it's done. So for this character, make sure that the top portion and the bottom portion are equal to each other. They are equal in length. So imagine a straight line going through the center of the character. This part here and this part here should be equal in length. Now the incorrect ways of writing Hiragana ku. Even though it's a pretty easy character to write, there are still ways that you can mess up. So for this example, if you notice the center of the character, if you write a line going through it, it's pointing up instead of straight across how it should be. So this would be incorrect. Alright, second example. For this example, there's two different things. First off, this line here is a little bit shorter than the bottom line. And for this line, if you write a straight line going through to make these even, you can see that it's a diagonal line and it is not a straight dot line that it should be. Next, for the third example. For this example, it looks too thin, like someone sat on the character and it just got squished. So make sure that there's enough space in between, but make sure that it is not too far apart like this as well. This would be a nice example. So it's even in the center, the line is horizontal when you draw a line through, has an equal amount of space on top and the bottom, it's not too wide, and it's not too thin either. Alright, next we have Hiragana ke. This character has 3 strokes. First stroke. For the first stroke, it kind of leans inward like a parenthesis, and it has a hook at the bottom. Second stroke. It is a straight line, and it starts a little bit below this part here. The third and final stroke. Okay, for this stroke, it also curves inward, so it looks very similar to a Hiragana I that we went over earlier, but it has a line going through the right side. If you notice on the bottom right, there is no hook, and if you were to draw little dots all the way across, you notice that the bottom right is longer than the left side. Okay, now the incorrect way of writing Hiragana ke. Alright, so for this example, I'm not sure if you can hear the roosters next door, but anyways, for this example, you can see that the characters are written very straight, so it doesn't have that parentheses sort of look to it, it's just very straight. So this would be considered incorrect. It must curve inwards slightly, but don't go overboard, because you don't want it to be way too curvy, because this is a little bit intense. Right, and the last example that I can think of is when the character has the left side written, and then if you notice, this line here starts exactly where this top part is, but if you're to write this character correctly, the line should start slightly lower than this top area. Alright, now we are on our last character for this week, which is Hiragana ko. For Hiragana ko, on your Hiragana chart that I have provided, it may look a little bit confusing because the way that it is printed in the chart is more of the printed or text version of the character. When you're handwriting the character, it looks a little bit different, right? So this character has 2 strokes. So the first stroke, with a hook going towards the center, and it is not an intense hook, so it's kind of small. Next stroke. So here's the bottom part. It's kind of curvy as well. It almost looks like it's an eyeball with a little eyelash pointing here. But make sure that there is enough space in the center of this character. So this character should not be written where it looks like it's squished, like someone is sitting on it. It should have a nice space so that it can fit nicely inside of a box. Alright, so in the hiragana chart, I believe the character looks something like this, where it almost looks like a letter Z and it's almost touching in the center. But when you're handwriting this, the bottom does not have a hook like it shows in the hiragana chart, so this is very important. Make sure that you follow this. And when you look at this character, it looks very similar to this character here, which on your hiragana chart is pronounced te. And I think some of you did make this mistake when you're doing the pronunciation assignment, was it last week or the week before, where I had this character written down for an example. I believe it was for konkai. So the character should have been something like... Okay, so I believe konkai was a character that I used, and some of you pronounced it tenkai. Anyways, make sure that you don't misread these two characters. So for the hiragana te, it is always connected here. For hiragana ko, handwritten form, there is no hook and there's a lot of space in between. Printed form, it may look like this, but there will be a small gap in between. So make sure to read this as hiragana ko. Now for the incorrect way of writing hiragana ko. So I kind of went over this earlier already, but if you copy exactly how the character looks like in the hiragana chart, for this character it will be considered incorrect. If you write your character where the top is straight with the hook and the bottom is straight, this will be considered incorrect as well, because it should have a little curve to the top and a little curve to the bottom as well. Alright, so the last example that I can think of is if you have the top part curved and the bottom part curved, but the bottom part is a lot longer than the top part, or if you have the top part that they're both curved, so it should be correct, but if the top part is too long compared to the bottom, these will be considered incorrect as well. The top and the bottom should be about the same length. And that's it for hiragana A through O and Ka through Ko writing practice guides. Make sure that you practice writing these characters every day. It'll really help you memorize these characters as well.